Jay here from Stretford, Paddock, and this is a one-on-one interview with one of our favourites. It's Kieran Maguire from The Price of Football. He's always coming on the channel and explaining things to us because we're not really well up on some of the financial side of what goes on at Manchester United, whether that's under the Glazers or with Sir Jim Ratcliffe. And thankfully, Kieran can usually fill us in. Kieran, thanks for coming on the channel. How are things?
All is good. In the world of football finance, there is no end of season. He's finished the last match and there's new stories and there's new things developing, as we're about to discuss, no doubt.
We are, and I don't want to take down this rabbit hole, but I do have to mention that the top you're wearing, because we spoke about it off camera, it's a bit of a mashup, innit? Is it the New Order England sort of top you've got there?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, I lived in Manchester for 40 years, big Manchester scene fan myself. So yeah, Umbro and New Order put together a shirt. And World in Motion is the greatest ever World Cup song. So it was the shirt of that particular tournament, and it's got the badge of the club, a badge of the band. Can't do better.
Do you know what? Despite the fact it's got Liverpool player John Barnes on it, I agree with you. It is. I'll probably lose some top red points for saying that, but you're right. Let's talk about Manchester United and INEOS, because as always, there's a lot of noise and talk about what is going on. There's been a few sort of questions put to us and some of our viewers and stuff and subscribers asking about what INEOS's ownership means in terms of the debt with Manchester United. Is the debt still an issue? Because we know that obviously INEOS haven't taken over full control of Manchester United. They've taken over a portion, and the club are obviously in this huge amounts of debt. Where are we up to with that, and what does it mean moving forward? Is it still an issue?
I don't think it's as big an issue as it was when the Glazers first arrived, because Manchester United as a club is generating so much more money coming in. I think the positives from INEOS is that it looks as if the funding which has come from them means that Manchester United don't have to borrow more in terms of the development of Carrington, for example. So yeah, if that's going to cost 50 million, if the Glazers were still in charge, then Manchester United would have to go to a bank and say, let's have 50 million. Because as we both know, there's no way the Glazers are putting their hands in their pockets to help the club. They only take money out of the club. So I think that's a positive. In the world of football, I think you need to run to stand still. If you take a look at the facilities available at some of the other clubs, and you look at what Chelsea have got at Cobham and what Spurs have got. I mean, Spurs stuff is out of this world. Off the pitch, that they've really spent a lot, and they spent really smart. United really have to get their act together with regards to that. So I think INEOS have identified that. They said, right, we're prepared to put a substantial amount of money in, and it means it's not being added to the debt, so therefore you're not paying interest on it. So from that point of view, I think it's good news. And if it can help to make a player 1% better, then yeah, Arsene Wenger always used to say, players are not hugely better than one another. It's always very, very tight margins. And we know that Dave Brailsford has got this obsession with marginal gains. I think that's part of the inner INEOS strategy and plan to take the club forwards.
Just on the INEOS strategy and plan, we were talking about it on a podcast earlier on in the week, and they've made a few changes, and obviously, the sort of some of the bigger changes in terms of like the CEO, which is a huge one, Omar Barada coming in, things like that. But also we see these little changes like stopping families and stopping staff members getting free travel to the cup final, and just these little things like stopping working from home and offering certain members of staff voluntary redundancy. Do you think those things can make a difference? Because just looking at that, at times there's a bit of a discussion going on where people think, really, is that going to make a difference if you're just stopping people getting free travel? But do you think that's part of the sort of parcel of what you've got to do when you come into something like United and try and fix things?
Well, we don't know how efficient Manchester United was being run under the Glazers. Let's be honest, they were absentee owners. It looks like INEOS are going to have a more direct approach. It is quite common when there's been a change in strategy, a change in management, to look at the whole business and to identify where things aren't as efficient as they could be. At the same time, if anybody thinks that Sarah from Urmston going into work 5 days a week is going to make a difference, whereas previously she was going in and she was working in the accounts office, she was working in the marketing department, and it allowed her to take her kids and drop them, do the school run twice a week and still do a full day's work. If they honestly think that that's going to change the efficiency of the club, I'm not convinced. For me, some of the stuff came across as very petty. Yeah, staff at Old Trafford work hard. You've got mates there. I've got mates there. It's not a holiday camp, and the support staff have worked just as hard as the players in terms of getting to Wembley for the FA Cup final. So to take away the free travel when we know that the Glazers were being flown across in a private jet, it just stinks of double standards. And I think the progress which has been made by INEOS and the goodwill that has been directed towards them, I think some of that has been lost by these strategies. And I know that the Manchester United fan base will be split. You're a Manchester lad. I've lived in Manchester most of my life. Manchester United was, at one stage, it was the biggest employer in the private sector in Manchester itself. And I think that was a huge thing to be proud of. And to target the staff and to say that the staff who are doing the background jobs are the problem, I think they're shooting in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I agree. I think just from a sort of, like you say, about the goodwill point of view and the optics of it, doesn't sound or look great. And I think a lot of United fans have been a little bit surprised and disappointed by some reactions. A big topic at the minute is the stadium. We know it's sort of up in the air in terms of what's going to happen. One of the latest reports was indicating that INEOS would be open to perhaps naming rights being sold to fund a stadium. What do you make of that? Do you think that is something that is sort of, because I keep saying this, but it kind of divided the fan base in terms of what fans I've spoke to anyway would be up for that. Do you think this is sort of part and parcel now where perhaps that is the way clubs are going, including Manchester United, even with all our history?
It'll always be Old Trafford. If we look at what's happened at Barcelona, it's now the Spotify Camp Nou, but it's always a new camp to us, isn't it? So I think if they're not going to do a Spurs, if they're just going to try to sort of tinker with Old Trafford, then sticking a sponsor's name in front of it will get a bit of money. And it could be argued that every bit of money helps, but I don't think that's going to change the attitudes of any red. If you're coming up from Stretford or Whalley Range, I lived in Whalley Range. I used to walk to Old Trafford in the 80s when I used to go and watch them a lot when I was a student. It's just I'm going to OT, and the sponsor's name won't get a mention. So I'm not sure there'll be a lot of value in it as a sponsorship arrangement. If, however, they knock the stadium down and they build something fresh, I know you don't like using the word, but it is the Etihad and it is the Emirates, and nobody ever called it Ashburton Grove, because what you've got to do is, if you've got a new build, you've got to get that name in quickly. Spurs, I think, have lost traction because they've been in the new stadium for 5 years, and my mates now just call it White Hart Lane. The Tottenham Hotspur Stadium it just sounds naff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So all of my mates just call it White Hart Lane because it's on the same. So if they knock it down and replace it with something new, then you could call it the Nike Manchester Stadium or something. And I don't think Manchester United fans will particularly like it, but it will be worth a hell of a lot more in terms of voting rights. If you take a look at what's happened in the States, where they've had new stadiums, again, it's tended to coincided with, well, we need to call it something, so let's call it the SoFi, let's call it the Snapdragon, let's call it this, that, and the other, and you can get a lot more money. If it's the second name for the stadium, most people have forgotten very, very quickly. You think about Bolton's stadium, it's the Reebok, as far as I'm concerned, although isn't it now? It then became the University of Bolton, and then wasn't it the Macron Stadium?
The Macron,
officially, and I'll say this very, very carefully, it's the Tough Sheet Stadium.
That, I mean, yeah, that joke writes itself, and I'm not saying anything, but yeah, I mean, do you think there's anything in this idea? Because I'm personally, listen, I love Old Trafford. I've had some of the best memories of my life at Old Trafford. I'm not against the idea of a new stadium. I'm not, because I go to Old Trafford and you go to Old Trafford and you know the issues in that stadium. And for me, I think how many times can you fix it before you go, look, we probably need something new? Do you think there is anything in the argument that United need a new stadium to compete long term, or do you think that if they wanted to, they could just fix Old Trafford because that's almost irrelevant in terms of the finances it could bring in and that sort of thing?
Well, Manchester United make more money from Old Trafford than any other club in the Premier League, and the only way that they can continue to make more money is if they put up prices. And I think what we've seen coming up for this season is it 5% for the season ticket holders, but when I've been reading some of the stuff from people who are in the boxes, I think the hospitality prices have gone up a hell of an amount. If the club wants to be competitive, who are they competing with? And you've got Everton have got a brand new purpose-built 21st century stadium coming along in Merseyside. I presume you've been to Spurs. I'm going there Saturday night to see Pearl Jam. It's the best stadium I've ever sat in. And I'm 6'3", so if I go to Old Trafford, I can't sit down. I don't want to sit down anyway, but I'm getting on a bit. I can't even sit down at half time and have my sandwich because it's too small and the seats are dreadful. So that means people might say, well, I'm not prepared to pay stupid prices for tickets. Spurs have done spectacularly well by thinking everything through. If they tinker with Old Trafford, exactly the same position as we have at present will arise. If I'm a United fan, I'll get there at 2:45, 20 to 3, because the catering concourses are too narrow, they're too small, the toilets are absolutely appalling, and I'll leave straight after the match. What we've seen at Spurs is that for every home game compared to the old White Hart Lane, Spurs fans are spending an extra 50 minutes in the stadium. Well, that's 50 minutes of spending time, which means more money coming into the club. So again, I absolutely agree with you. We've got great memories, but the memories of those moments at Old Trafford, they'll stay with you, Jay. And for any United fan, those memories will still be there. What you will have with a new stadium is better facilities, better concourses, better range of food. You'll be treated more like an adult. Getting up and down those stairs is a pain in the backside, as we know. And I don't think that there's much of a downside, except it's going to cost a lot more. And then you get that other awkward question: what's going to happen in the period in which it's being built? Because Spurs went to Wembley for 2 years. You're not going to go to the council stadium, are you?
No, I like the fact you call it the council stadium, but no, we're not. I mean, that's like there was talk one there of maybe, you build a new stadium next to Old Trafford. Could you still use Old Trafford? I'm not sure. Maybe there's something in that, but like you're saying, if you're going to completely renovate or do the current Old Trafford, how does that work? There's a lack of grounds nearby that you can realistically use that could hold anywhere near the amount of fans you need for Manchester United. I just want to ask you a little bit quickly before I let you go, Kieran, about transfers, because obviously the transfer window's open. United fans are looking at it. We know we need a massive rebuild. I think we need quite a few players to compete if we're going to get to the sort of the top level where we want to be. We've got PSI, you've got FFP, whatever you want to call it, coming in. How much does that affect Manchester United in terms of the business you want to do? Because we're hearing that varying reports, we might not have that much money to spend, or we might have to sell a few players.
I think the problem that I've got, which has been dealt with to a certain extent, was that there was a genuine chance that the club wouldn't be in Europe at all next season. And Old Trafford, for a Europa League match, it's still going to be sold out. There's no reason why you can't get £3 to £4 million a match, and you're probably going to have a minimum of 4 matches. So, that's an extra £16 million in the coffers. You're going to have prize money from UEFA. So I think Manchester United have already got a benefit of at least £30 to £40 million from winning the FA Cup just by itself. That's going to assist. The problem that the club has is that, and this is a compliment rather than a criticism of the club, Manchester United is seen as a destination club rather than a journey club. Look, I'm a Brighton fan. I know if we sign a player and he's good, we'll get him for 2 seasons, then he's off somewhere, usually Chelsea. And then he turns out to be crap. But yeah, if players want to come, players want to have Manchester United on their CV and they want to stay there for a long time. And I think that's the problem they've got. There will be some players there who have come, perhaps haven't delivered to the level of expectations of the fans, and United pay top wages. So, and I've never criticised the player here. If I'm on 150 grand a week and I've got 2 years left on my contract and I'm not even seen in the squad, and I've got a chance to go to Leicester or Brighton or Palace and earn 80 grand a week, I'm not going to turn down the money that I'm already on. So I think this is an issue for United. The exit door, I think, is the most important one, because that will allow the club the flexibility to sign. I don't think that they're in as bad a position as some of the commentators are making out. And the reason for this is that PSR is assessed over 3 years, and about to drop out of PSR is 3 years ago when they had a huge loss. So that actually puts them in a slightly better position. And also, if you sign a player for £50 million, because of this thing called amortization, you sign him on a 5-year deal, it's costing you £10 million a year. Well, we've just established that Manchester United are probably going to be somewhere in the region of £30 to £40 million better off by qualifying for the Europa League next season, because they're the biggest fish in the pool. They're going to be getting more TV money. They'll be selling out Old Trafford and so on. So will they be able to go and spend hundreds and hundreds of millions in the same way that we've seen with Chelsea? No, but I think that they've still probably got more flexibility than people think. And I think this is part of INEOS's strategy. You and I both know historically that there's been a Manchester United tax. When United are interested in signing a player, 30 minutes. Oh, no. We said 40. No, we said 40. And then United end up paying the 40. So I think this is part of a broader issue in that INEOS are trying to tell the football market, we're the new kids in town, but we're not going to be mugged off.
Yeah, it does feel like that. And I think, you mentioned there about wages as well. And that's something obviously Manchester United have got to look at, because whenever we look at the players we're trying to move on, the wages, I mean, I think some of the highest earning players are players that are at Manchester United in the league, or players that are at Manchester United who aren't even getting in the first team. I mean, it really is shocking. Just before you go, Kieran, as well, I always say this to you, I'm going to say it again. A few years ago when we first started on this channel, you said to me, keep your eye on Jim Ratcliffe, Jay. That is what you said. You said you didn't think that bid that he put in for Chelsea was real. You felt like he was sort of sending a signal to the Glazers, and here we are. So I always listen to you. And make sure you go and check out Kieran Maguire and the Price of Football. There's a link in the description. Kieran, it's always a pleasure. Thanks for coming on the channel, as always, and sort of filling us in and explaining things to us as well, because I need it. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Cheers out, Jay. Take care.